All right, good afternoon, everyone. As we wait for a few others to join, we're going to have an audience poll today. We'll actually have two questions that we're going to ask. And so if you could, enter yes or no into the chat box. And what we'll do is at the end of the webinar, when we send out the link to the recording, we'll also send the results to these two audience poll questions. So the first question for everyone is the fall term successfully aligning with your plans? Simply enter yes or no into the chat window. We'll get started here in just a moment. We'll give a few more minutes for folks to join. All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Leader, and I'm going to be the MC for today for our webinar. First of all, I want to welcome everyone to the President's Roundtable. My name is Alex Leader, as I mentioned, and I'm the founder and CEO here at Aviso Retention. I'm joined today with three presidents: President Lisa Chapman, President Walter Dalton, and President Ron Schumacher, to discuss how they are working to overcome the impact of COVID-19 on their community colleges. And I want to thank everyone that's attending and taking time out of their busy day. We're going to focus really on four topics today. The first being navigating through budget challenges and optimizing CARES Act funding. The second being improving equity on campus and off. The third being leveraging technology to better enable virtual student engagement. And number four, increasing enrollment and retention during the pandemic. So just a few housekeeping things as we get started. The first one is please ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the session today and your camera is turned off. The three presidents and myself will obviously have ours on. The webinar is also being recorded, and so we'll be sending out the link to all of the attendees after. And lastly, if you have questions throughout the webinar, please enter them in the chat. We'll be having a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the webinar where we'll be able to answer questions that folks submitted as part of the registration process, but also the questions that arise throughout today's session. So to get us kicked off, I want to begin by giving our distinguished panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves, beginning with President Chapman, and then President Dalton, President Schumacher, and President Chapman, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Alex. It is a pleasure to join you virtually this afternoon, and certainly an honor to share the conversation with President Dalton and President Schumacher. I've been in the community college system about 33 years. I am the president at Central Carolina Community College in North Carolina. If you know anything about the state, our service area is a little south of Raleigh, and we're Central Carolina because we're smack dab in the middle of the state of North Carolina. I spent some time at the system office, served in a lot of different roles at Central Carolina, where I've spent the majority of my career, and it is just a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex, for the invitation. I look forward to being with everyone. As Alex said, I'm Walter Dalton, president at Isothermal Community College, also in North Carolina near Asheville. I had a very non-traditional path to the presidency. I practiced law for over 30 years. During that time, I chaired the board here at Isothermal Community College. The time practicing law overlapped with 16 years of public elective service, where I was very involved in statewide educational policy and appropriations. During that time, I also served on the board of Southern Regional Educational Board out of Atlanta, which covers 16 states. I then became a professor at Gardner-Webb University in their in-house legal counsel for a brief period of time. And then I was named president at Isothermal Community College, where I've been for the last 8 years, and I look forward to our discussion today.
Thanks, Alex, for having us. President Dalton, President Chapman, it's really a pleasure to serve on this panel with you. I am Ron Schumacher. I'm at Terra State Community College in Fremont, Ohio. I've been president here for almost 2 years now, and we've been tackling some key issues, not only COVID, but other issues on campus. My background, I came out of higher education on the private side. I was vice president for enrollment for about 10 years at 2 different 4-year privates, one in Indiana, one in Ohio, and had the opportunity to switch over to community college. And the 2 years have just been an incredible ride. I could have done without COVID, but we are surviving and doing all the things we can do to keep in-person classes going and taking care of our students. So it's a pleasure to be here, Alex.
Yep. Thank you all for those great introductions. So let's start the discussion today. And let's start with you, President Chapman. So how have you and your institution navigated through the budget challenges and optimized CARES Act funding during 2020?
Well, so Alex, for the folks that may not know about North Carolina's funding, we have 58 colleges. We do not keep our tuition. We have a standard tuition across all 58 institutions, and we are funded basically based on what we did in the year past. And so Central Carolina had an exceptional year last year, which means that our funding this year is pretty strong. Now, there are restrictions that the state has put on how we use the funding based on the pandemic. So we have challenges with that, but we've had the funding this year. Plus, we certainly have made good use of the CARES Act funding. You know, some of that money came to the state and through the state to us. Some of it came directly to the institution, either going directly to students for their needs or to the institution to meet institutional needs. And some of that CARES Act funding is required to be spent by the end of the year, December, and then some we have longer to spend. So basically what we're doing is we're using the funding that must be spent by December to target the most immediate needs and improve our online learning. We've increased the number of virtual success coaches on staff. We've enhanced our training and professional development of those success coaches. We've also upgraded and worked to secure more technology for students and for faculty to better navigate the virtual learning environment. And then the CARES Act dollars that are available for student scholarships have also been very important in helping many of our students to be able to continue their education pathway. With that being said, our enrollment is down this year. So I've said this is not the year that we may be most impacted by the pandemic and its effects. So we are definitely engaged in scenario planning for the next few years as we look at possible impacts going forward.
Yeah, thank you. President Dalton.
I would agree, especially with that last comment. For the years going forward, I think that's when the tough times are really going to come. So we are continually monitoring our positions. If there are retirements, we are not immediately filling those right now. We're trying to plan ahead because we expect the state coffers to be down next year. But right now, we're using CARES Act money to hire more adjuncts so we can have smaller class size and practice distancing. We've increased our hot spots around the campus and other locations because we're in a rural area. Broadband is a real issue. Aviso is extremely important to us, and we used that very effectively in the spring when everything went online. But we were part of a 5-year grant led by President Chapman's college, along with 10 other community colleges, but that grant expired. So without the CARES Act money, we could not have continued that great service, and we think that is very important for us. We purchased some laptops that we allow the at-risk students to have, so they will have that technology. We've spent more money on virtual tutoring and counseling and success coaches. We've done professional development online to enhance that. We've increased our electronic storage because we think this is going to be a continuing process, and we've purchased more simulation equipment because we've lost some clinical space. But we're hopeful that we get through this year okay, and that next year is not as tough as I'm afraid it may be.
All right, thank you. Dr. Schumacher.
Yeah, so at Terra State, we kind of took a different approach. We did cut some salaries across campus. We did have some positions. We have two unions on campus, one the faculty union, the other is the staff union. And during the first part of this fiscal year, we moved our staff union back to 32 hours. We also looked at the campus, and starting with me and my salary, I took a 20% pay cut, as well as going all the way across campus to anywhere from 10, 7.5, and 5% pay cuts. So that was the first thing that we put in place, so that as we were dealing with the uncertainty of our enrollments coming in for the fall, we could really move that forward. I'm happy to report that as of last week, everybody is back up to their full salaries, with the exception of the leadership team. And we did that purposefully because we didn't want to have a bouncing back and forth of people in their salaries. We utilize CARES money, much like the other presidents said. We purchased computers for students who could not afford them. Also advanced technology. So we learned from when we had to go online in the spring to other technologies that we could have in our programs in the trades. We also did a lot of training for our faculty as they came back. We're looking at ways to utilize artificial intelligence as we move forward, just in case we have to go back into a situation where we're 100% virtual. We are also looking at other safety protocols on campus. We've been very fortunate in the sense that the protocols that we put in place in the spring, we actually augmented and carried them over into the fall, in purchasing temperature monitors as people walk in the 7 or 8 different doors on campus. All the internal doors on our campus we've locked up, so there's only those 8 access points that students and faculty and staff have. We're also investigating the opportunity to invest in either UV or ozone in all of our air handlers. So,
yeah, that's great. Thank you for that insight. So all 3 of you are doing so much to help students in addition to providing access to technology. So that really brings us to the topic of equity. So when we think about budgeting for community colleges and how we distribute funding to have the greatest impact for our students, we also have to think about how those same students are managing through these times. So President Dalton, what has your institution done to improve equity both on and off campus?
That's a very accurate comment, because I think the students are struggling, some struggling more than others. 25% of our population or more identify as food deprived. They miss paying a bill to eat, or they miss a meal to pay a bill. So we had already started a food pantry, but it was really in high demand when COVID hit. People were in dire straits, and we were able to get a grant to fully replenish our food pantry, and in addition, gave a $25 debit card to the most at-risk students at a local grocery store. We have an employee assistance program and a student assistance program, which provides for mental health services, counseling, things that are not necessarily academically related, but are life related. And that has been a great benefit. Our area health education center has partnered with us to help us address COVID issues, to educate on COVID. As I said, we purchased laptops for the more at risk and increased our hotspots. We've expanded our computer lab hours because of the issue with broadband. But Viso, again, is a way to reach out to all students and find what their challenges are, and helps us to help them overcome those challenges much earlier, and helps to organize our communication with our students. And that's particularly important for those most at risk.
President Schumacher.
Yeah, so I'm not as fortunate as the other two presidents. We actually got started on our Aviso project a little later. And boy, if I could do it all over again, I would, because I think having Aviso would help us in some of the situations with our students. But, you know, we did a couple things as far as the improvement of equity on our campus. We partnered with ProMedica, our local healthcare system, to provide mental health checkups, and these were always virtual. So we were in this prior to COVID, but then we extended it to the faculty and staff. So it was here for the students, but then we opened it up to our entire campus. We continue to have a food pantry and actually a clothing pantry on campus run by our student government office. And that became a critical piece in terms of when we went totally virtual to help the students. We also had a portion of the CARES funding that we ran different metrics for our students. So if they were having issues with transportation technology, housing, child support, that they could appeal and get this emergency funding out of the CARES dollars. We actually did something very similar to what President Dalton mentioned. We set up an amplifier on one of our buildings overlooking one of our parking lots, so that if our students, whether they were our College Credit Plus students or our faculty and staff, when we went into this virtual world, that if they had issues, because we are in a rural environment up here where we are in Terra State, that they could have the internet connection from the institution and provided that to them to increase their bandwidth. Thanks.
Dr. Chapman.
So, Alex, certainly many of the same things that you heard President Schumacher and President Dalton talk about, Central Carolina has engaged in as well. While we have had a fairly strong online presence for a while, and we have been fortunate to be a partner of Aviso's for a number of years. When we first started with Aviso, we talked about the networking of support, but we were kind of networking face-to-face and making sure that people had maybe online notes and some opportunities for the students. Being able to network online, and Aviso has certainly helped us with that, has taken on a huge importance as we continue to move forward. The virtual advising and coaching, we added virtual office hours in all of our support areas, and while we are doing that, though, we know that many of our students, just as the other two presidents have indicated, are challenged by limited technology or limited broadband access. We serve a rural area as well, and we have some places in our service area that have excellent broadband access, and we have some places that have horrible broadband access. We couldn't simply, I know that some of our sister institutions, even some of our educational partners, provided hotspots for students to take with them. We found that the coverage that was missing in our service area meant that those hotspots were not going to help those students very well. So we certainly did the parking lot Wi-Fi. We moved access points, initially moved them closer to the window, and then began to not replace, but augment that with actually looking at doing external access points so that students could drive in. That was when our campus facilities were completely closed and everything was online. We have opened the computer labs back up as we've done more classes, and we have an online computer lab reservation system so that we can maintain social distance, so that students can plan with their schedules. Those students who are parents and working and all the other things that come along with parent teachers right now with the pandemic. So we also partnered with community members, public schools, libraries to share our parking lot for their uses and the communication of what they're doing on our website as well, to try to blanket the community as much as possible, get as close to individuals as possible with access. We have a Dreamkeeper Fund that was started back in 2016. It was used heavily, and fortunately we had some great corporate partners that shifted some donations, added some donations, so that we could continue to provide those emergency funds to students, the grocery cards and different things, as you've heard my fellow presidents talk about, including the food pantry. We shifted that to takeout bags. We have the state-supported student assistance program, the employee assistance program. In addition, we're in the process of not completed it all, but we're bringing Single Stop to campus to better connect our students with all of the local resources and services, because these needs are going to continue for several years to come. And in addition to that, many of our faculty have participated in or are participating in some state-level professional development that has been provided through our North Carolina Student Success Center to learn more about developing inclusive and supportive online learning in terms of improving the environment. AQ is providing that training for us, and that's critical. What's happening outside of the class as well as what's happening inside the class in terms of support for our students and all of the priorities they're trying to balance. And we're working to keep our college employees supported and connected, because we have asked a lot of them, and many of them are also teaching their students, their children as well at home as they're trying to work with the pandemic situation.
Yeah, and I think I echo what you all said, because really with the pandemic, it's more of the focus on the person, the holistic person, rather than the student or whomever is enrolled within the college. So it's so incredibly important that if those basic core needs, such as mental health, such as food, if we're not able to provide those to the person, then how can we expect their focus to really be on their education? So I really enjoyed all three of your comments there. Now let's shift a little bit to technology. So technology can be a great divider if we let it be. And we've seen that with regard to equity through history. But technology can also be a great connector, right? So there are things that we can do with technology that we would never be able to do as individuals trying to accomplish a certain goal. So President Schumacher, how are you leveraging technology to better enable virtual student engagement and creating that connection that's so incredibly important right now?
Absolutely. Well, you know, there's some things that I think as a campus, we kind of understand it's good and the bad, right? When we went on quarantine, we had to figure out ways to continue to meet not only with each other as the administrative leadership on campus, but also how we were still going to meet with our students, with our prospective students. And one of the lessons learned is that, boy, we can really have people work from home in different roles. Obviously, roles are different on campus. And so what we instituted this fall is it's a virtual work on Friday. And so, you know, most of our meetings we set up on Fridays so that we weren't on campus just constantly in meetings as administration. And it afforded our housekeeping, our facilities crews, the opportunity to do some more deep cleaning over those 3 days of those different areas. Again, purchasing virtual reality units, augmented reality units, laptops for faculty and staff was huge, because a lot of them, when they were at their desks, they had the regular old computer there. So having those laptops where they could work from home and making sure they were doing that. Again, we're going to carry those Fridays, virtual work Fridays, into the spring semester. Our admissions and financial aid staff are doing virtual admissions visits because you can't go into the high schools right now. So they're working with the guidance counselors and the principals to set those dates and times up for those students to talk. We're actually doing a financial aid 101 session for our regional schools where we're providing a link to, I think it's on Microsoft Teams, where they can sign in and go through that financial aid 101. So we look forward to the completion and implementation of Aviso, but those are some of the things that you got to roll your sleeves up and just work through these things and how people, we want to meet people where they are at this current point in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And President Chapman.
Well, absolutely. We've got to meet people where they are right now. And we have said a lot that we are still in the business of student success. We're just doing it differently now. And I've mentioned we have the virtual office hours in all of our student support areas. We have our virtual success coaching, advising, tutoring, as President Schumacher mentioned, virtual recruiting, and job fairs, career fairs. I will tell you this, we've learned a lot. The first ones that we did, we would not want to replicate in the same way because we stood up some things very, very quickly. And we learned a lot. And we will continue to take advantage of what we learned because, as Ron said, we know that we can use technology to do some things differently. And I'll give you a quick example. Students used to have to come maybe after work to see a counselor, right? Because we were great about having evening hours for them. They couldn't come on their lunch break because there wasn't enough time. But, you know, if we have a virtual counseling session during their lunch break, they can step outside and do that during lunch and not take time away from their family. So I think there are clearly some important things that we learned that we want to take advantage of. All of these proactively engaged students, and it's important to know that what's going on with the students impacts their learning. We've got to reach out to them, leverage those predictive analytics and reports that we see, you know, that we get with Aviso so that we can not just do the kind of the general or nudges and automatic communications, but make sure we really personalize how we're engaging with our students and really effectively help them move forward in their programming.
Excellent. And President Dalton.
Well, as Dr. Chapman said a while ago, we're proud. We also had a very strong online presence before COVID, but no matter how good you may be or what technology you have, it never overcomes the deficiency of lack of adequate broadband. And that transcends COVID, but COVID has really shined the spotlight on that deficiency, and that really needs to be addressed by the policymakers going forward. But we were doing a lot of things with technology before COVID. We're just doing a whole lot more of it now, and we're trying to train everybody to be able to be tech savvy and to be able to use the technology that is there. We're doing a lot of professional development. We are finding that the world has changed. I don't think, you know, after COVID that things go right back to where they were. I think we'll always be doing more Zoom or GoToMeeting and these types of things, and we can be more efficient with that. As I said, we have used Aviso to great advantage. Thank goodness for it, because students were struggling, faculty was struggling. We had students and faculty that had to drive 5 or 10 miles to get to an appropriate hotspot to download homework and upload their responses, and it's just not very effective. But Aviso has been great. Our investment in virtual learning and the professional development we've done, upping some of our classrooms for virtual learning is the way we have spent some of that CARES money. But I do think it has shown a spotlight on some of the deficiencies we had regardless of COVID, and we need to be able to address that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, thank you. So moving on to the next topic here. So as the data clearly shows, there's a significantly higher return on investment for retention versus recruiting. And so President Chapman, maybe you could share some of the steps that you've taken there at Central Carolina to increase retention during the pandemic, and also to ensure that students that are enrolled currently this fall come back in the spring.
Well, you know, what we keep talking about in this conversation is we must keep our students and our faculty and all of our employees engaged. Everybody plays a major role in our student success. So how do we make sure that we're continuing to improve our virtual engagement to do that? Well, it's got to include lots of different opportunities for students. And so I'm certain, just like my colleagues here, you know, we have a student activities coordinator. She now is spending a whole lot of time with engagement with some virtual student activities that are available that we wouldn't have thought about doing had we not had the pandemic. We're really trying to enhance the role of our virtual success coaches. I've mentioned that. Really strengthening our proactive advising. Before we started this, I mentioned to you all, I'm wearing blue today and I have the college shirt logo on because Central Carolina has worked with its friends at NACADA, and we see how important our advising, our proactive advising is. So we've decided that October the 6th is National Advising Day. We have a national day for everything, and advising and success coaching is critically important in that retention. And I will tell you, while we're investing in our professional development to enhance how our coaches and our advisors engage the students, because the technology allows them to be proactive, but we've got to make sure that we are providing that targeted, empathetic engagement with the student. We can't just rely on one-way communication. We've got to work through that network of support. We couldn't do that without technology. We just need to make sure that we're leveraging the technology to improve that total engagement of the student that we've known all along is so critical. And even when we look at the data for Central Carolina with our enrollment down some, the drop is in the percentage of first-time enrolled students, not in returning students. So we've been fortunate in that we have certainly retained the students that we're continuing on.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. President Dalton, and then I will want to move to the next question after your answer, President Dalton. I just want to make sure that we stay on time today.
Okay, so thank you. We don't know where COVID may take us, so every single class at Isothermal has a web-based component. So if we have to transition to all online as we did in the spring, the students and the faculty will at least be somewhat familiar with that process. As far as retention, we've tried to better align some of our programs or create new programs aligned with our economy. Trine International Equestrian Center had the World Equestrian Games. It's in our area. So we've upped our game with equine science programs, hospitality, culinary, new dental assisting programs, a partnership with the local area health center, human services technicians. All of those have very robust enrollment. So we've tried to be relevant to the economy along with what we normally do. We have fast track courses, flexible adult study tracks, which are 8-week courses, accelerate the learning, get them through faster, hopefully retain them in a better fashion. Aviso is all about retention. That's what that does. And again, we've used that to advantage. We've also targeted our recruits. We had enrollment growth this year of about 4% and last year of 7%, but we've really targeted the non-traditional student that had some college, identified those, and really worked on getting them back into the educational process, as well as looking at our high school students who we already had contact with in dual enrollment, and those that were not enrolling, really reach out and get them into the college. Also, every new student, we work with them through advising on a master academic plan. Some come in and they bite off too much early, they get discouraged. So we try to have a realistic plan for them. If you're working 2 jobs, and taking care of your parents, what is really going to work in your course of study here at Isothermal. Let's make it realistic and reasonable and get you through this process.
Thank you. And so as we continue on, let's spend just a few minutes talking about lessons we've learned throughout the pandemic here in 2020. I think it goes without saying, right, that on January 1, we wouldn't have thought everything would have occurred the way that it did. And so now we're making do. We're making sure that we're trudging through and we're creating successful outcomes, not only for our students, but also the staff and faculty and others that we serve. And so President Schumacher, how are you leveraging what you've learned as well as best practices for recruiting to ensure that you can continue a more positive trend for enrollment in spring of 2021 and also looking forward to next fall?
Yeah, so we are actually in the midst of a full reorganization. The ending of a Title III grant that we had. So we had to do some real close introspection on those areas, the recruitment and the advising areas, which is one of the reasons why we connected up with Aviso. And so as we're looking forward to spring semester and then at recruitment for fall, we're putting measures in place that will assist us, communication flows that we didn't have in the past, making sure we are communicating with students, again, meeting them at where they want to be met, communicating students via cell phone instead of emails, because students, they don't have a very good response to emails. They want to be communicated on their cell phone or on their Canvas account, which we're a banner institution, and on the SIS system that we utilize there. So this full reorganization of the enrollment services and student services division, my feeling is we'll see an overall increase in our recruitment, not only for our first-time folks, but also for our continuing folks. And I think President Dalton mentioned it, that looking at that population of students who have some college but haven't finished, that's another targeted population for us. And I was mentioning on the call before everybody got here, we actually did a rally on campus today for our students, and really for that retention aspect and really that whole aspect of mental health and having this come together as a community. It really was a neat experience looking at the students, faculty, and staff who were out here with masks on, social distancing, and doing all those things that we could do for the students and faculty and staff on campus. So,
yeah, thank you for that. And then President Chapman, to wrap us up with kind of the first part of the webinar today, how are you leveraging key learnings and best practice, really what you've learned from a recruiting perspective as you look at spring enrollment and next fall?
Well, and I think you've heard it from my two colleagues. I think we recognize the students that can take the greatest advantage of what we have to offer, and who may not see that, and we target working with them, use the technology to help us do that. So engaging those students that may have stopped out, making sure they're aware of the financial supports, making sure that we have the seamless pathways that are intentional. We have always had opportunities for students to maybe take short-term training or do mini-masters or do a curriculum that we think of as a more traditional. But what we've not done is intentionally built those so that students can stop in and out as they need to because of everything going on in their lives. And we've got to do that. If we're going to help with the equity today and the economic mobility, we've got to be much more intentional. And I think what we know now is we can be, and we must be, and we will.
Yeah, excellent feedback. All right, so we are going to take another audience poll quickly. And the question for everyone in attendance, do you have the tools you need to be successful for the spring 2021 term? And simply enter yes or no in the chat box, and we'll make sure that we compile those results and we provide them back again along with the webinar recording. So now I want to move on to an open Q&A portion of the webinar. If anyone hasn't entered questions into the chat box, if you'd like our three presidents to address, feel free to do so. There were also quite a few questions as part of the registration process. And so this first question, and we'll open it up to all three, do you predict any reduced services or added responsibilities to meet financial challenges that you might have in the coming terms or years? And I assume the answer there is a combination, but can you offer specifics? And maybe President Schumacher, we'll start with you.
Sure. I don't see reduced services. I actually see an increased number of services that we as institutions need to provide to our students, our faculty, and our staff. The added responsibilities part, absolutely. I think more people have to take responsibility for different things going on. And I'll give you one such example. You know, in this reorganization of our enrollment services suite, we are actually asking our admissions counselors to take on some of those level 1 and level 2 financial aid questions because we don't have as many financial aid counselors as we have admissions counselors. So really trying to become more efficient and effective in how we're taking care of our students. And customer service comes first in regards to that, making sure we're responding quickly to the needs of our students and not making them wait or not making them go through 5 or 6 different transfers of a phone call before they receive an answer. So yeah, it is a combination, Alex. Reduced services, absolutely not.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. We did have a great question around equity. So here's the question. How do you respond to this statement? If you require students to learn at a distance or remotely and give grades, then you are grading on privilege. How would you respond?
Alex, I would, this is President Dalton, I would say we don't grade on privilege, but we grade on performance, but privilege will impact performance. I know that may be parsing words, but it's not an equal world out there in the virtual world. Some have the technology, some do not, and so it's bound to impact performance, and it does.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. All right, a question around retention and recruiting, specifically around high school students, early college dual enrollments. But it's a two-part question, and this may be the last question for today. So how do you connect with high school students to generate interest and eventually have them enroll at your institution? And then once enrolled, what strategies can the audience use to better assist this population?
So Alex, I might jump in real quickly. We in North Carolina, many of us have career coaches in the high schools that we serve. And we've had those career coaches there for a few years. I think what we've got to do is really develop some strong professional development for how those coaches engage our students and understand what is available in the community in terms of workforce so that the pathways are appropriate and the students are prepared and they're able to kind of follow those students using the technology. We've kept that technology within the college, but we're going to have to bridge it with our high school partners. And I think the other thing is we've really got to work with community leaders to help them help students see the opportunities available to them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. And we'll sneak one more question in here. So morale, let's just talk about being human. So how can we improve morale among faculty, staff, and others, including students, during these stressful and unprecedented times?
Well, I'll throw it out there that the rally we did today did it and it was brought up by faculty that they wanted to see us do this, and I just had to give the stamp of approval. And it was amazing to see, you know, a congregation of 200, 250 folks out in the courtyard at different periods of time, people coming and going, and all socially distanced, all masked up, and so many more smiles, so much interaction between people, again, in that safe way to do things. And I was really nervous about it, Alex, I got to be honest, because when it was brought up, but this faculty member said it's been 200 days since we've had the opportunity to interact. And I think it would go a long way for the mental health, for the morale of the campus. And it really did. So I think it's critical that we have our eye on the pulse of the campus when you talk about morale, because it leads to, definitely a situation where if your morale goes down, your attitudes can really change pretty quickly. And all of a sudden, then you're dealing with a culture issue on campus.
Yeah, well said, well said. So that is all the time that we have for questions today. So as we wrap up, I would just like to thank each of the three presidents, President Chapman, President Dalton, and President Schumacher, for sharing your valuable time and also your insights. And then for those in the audience that joined, I hope you found something today that's useful that you can take back to your institution to help guide the great work that you're already doing, while helping faculty, staff, and your students be more successful during these times. So we'll be sure to send out the link to the recording and the polling questions the polling answers after the webinar. And as always, for further information about Avisa Retention, visit avisaretention.com. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Take care.